Yep, let me take this all the way back. Fucking hell. Welcome to the show! This is Should We Be Talking About This? Episode 78.
I'm Chance.
I'm Rachael. And I have an update on Ukraine before we get started.
Yeah, because it's an ongoing thing.
Yes. Is that okay if I just... I mean, it's pages.
I'll allow it.
It's pages.
Okay.
That's why we gotta jump right in. We can't talk about your Patreon bullshit or all the other stuff that you say. We gotta just run right past it.
All right, we'll do it next time.
So since we last recorded, Russia has started using cluster bombs.
Yeah.
And you knew what those are. I did not, so I had to look them up. They're basically bombs the size of marbles that when they're thrown or dropped, they cause all these little mini explosions.
Right.
And when I say mini explosions, I mean, one explosion can kill a person. They're just smaller than what you would think of as an explosion.
It's a bunch of mini bombs grouped together.
Right. And one of the big problems with cluster bombs is that not all of them detonate. So they will land and stay there until somebody steps on it or picks it up. And again, it looks like a marble. And if a child, let's say, picks it up, it will then explode.
Right.
They were actually outlawed in an international treaty named the Convention on Cluster Munitions in 2008. Russia was one of the 107 nations agreeing to make them illegal. And it was simply just because the threat they posed to everyday civilians.
Right. Okay.
Well, Russia dropped them on civilians this weekend, including residential complexes, and that is a war crime. Putin also ordered Russian soldiers to fire on unarmed Ukrainian citizens that were protesting. And they did, and they killed many of them, and that is also a war crime. They bombed a shopping plaza that had like a shoe store, a jewelry store, a sporting goods place. No military or government anything in it. And they killed over 30 civilians.
Jeez.
Which is, again, a war crime.
And he's just like blatant about it.
Yes. Another war crime that he's committed happened in the city of Mariupol. I know I'm not saying that right, but there was a truce that was struck between Russian soldiers and Ukrainian soldiers for a 7-hour ceasefire to let civilians, including a lot of children, get out of the city before they started firing on each other. Well, 30 minutes into this truce, after both parties had agreed to it, Russians started firing on the civilians trying to flee, killing a bunch of them.
So fucked up.
And that was on the orders of Putin, which again, another war crime. Putin is ordering bombing of refugee camps that people are making that have fled cities that have been just demolished or areas there is active combat.
Mm-hmm.
And after firing on these refugee camps, Putin announced that no refugees are safe unless they seek asylum in Russia or Belarus. But they're worried that if they go there, he's going to start concentration camps for them.
Yeah.
Which is very plausible.
God, he's an asshole.
Another thing that happened, which may have actually happened before I recorded last time, I don't really know where it falls in the timeline, but Ukrainian President Zelensky released Ukrainian prisoners that promised that they would fight for Ukraine, even murderers on death row. I mean, desperate times.
Yeah.
Russia also sent a convoy to Ukraine's largest nuclear plant, Zaporizhia, and citizens were able to intercept this convoy and hold them off for as long as they could, but the Russian soldiers ended up firing on the nuclear plant, setting it on fire. Ukrainian citizens and people at the plant were begging Russians to put the fire out or let their fire department come in and let it out, but they wouldn't. The Russians then went in and took power of the nuclear plant and took hostages for everybody that was working in there and then cut off all communication to the outside, so we don't know what's happened to the people that were inside that nuclear plant. Meanwhile, Putin has cut all social media in Russia. In fact, I found a TikToker named Russian Pappies. It's RussianPappIIIS. I think that she does a better job of explaining what life is like in Russia right now better than I could ever do. So I'm just going to play the audio from her TikTok so everyone can kind of get an idea from she's not necessarily an insider, but what's happening in Russia.
Okay.
I know I don't have that many followers here, and I don't have the biggest audience, but it's actually a matter of urgency that somehow we spread awareness on this. I'm Russian, but I grew up in California. I'm originally from Moscow, and I just wanted to spread some awareness and basically some main points as to what's going on in the country right now. I personally am in London. I work here. However, my entire family is back home in St. Petersburg and Moscow. And what I'm about to tell you is actually what's happening back in Russia right now. Essentially, it's live footage of the dystopian society described in the book 1984. Facebook and Twitter are entirely banned. New laws were introduced yesterday with prison sentences for up to 15 years for the spread of misinformation about the special operation in Ukraine. Misinformation is essentially defined as any information that is not in line with official state reports, and this includes information discussed via personal texting, etc. There is a blanket ban on the word war. News channels, any social media accounts, citizens are only allowed to refer to what's happening in Ukraine as special operation. Otherwise, similarly, they can be arrested and news channels will be shut down entirely. Most independent news channels have been banned over the course of this past week. Any foreign currency transfers abroad are banned. The stock market will be closed for at least another week. Yesterday, the Russian government announced a proposal to send those arrested and detained at anti-war protests across the country to go fight in Ukraine. Only 30% of the Russian population has a passport allowing them to leave the country, and even then it has become virtually impossible to do so. Thousands have been detained across various cities in Russia at anti-war protests, including children and elderly people. In Russia, protests can only occur if it has been pre-approved by the government. Don't think I need to go into further detail there. One can only guess that obviously an anti-government protest will not be approved by the government. Meanwhile, Putin appears to be sitting further and further away from his advisors at every meeting that he has. Not intending in any way to detract from the absolutely devastating humanitarian crisis that is happening in Ukraine right now as a result of Russia's invasion. Just wanting to shed light on what's happening in Russia right now internally, because it's honestly petrifying and it has the potential to further threaten global peace and stability and security in a truly unprecedented way. The more repression, censorship, and discontinuation of information flow there is in Russia, the more unchecked becomes Putin's power and the less accountability he has. There is a clinically insane person as the head of state in Russia right now, and he has access to nuclear weapons.
Like I said, I don't think I could have said it any better than her.
Yeah, that was great.
One of the things that she didn't talk about is that Putin has addressed the civilian casualties that are happening in Ukraine to the Russian people, stating that Ukraine's soldiers are using civilians as human shields, which is why there are so many civilian casualties, which we all know is incorrect.
God.
He's also likening Ukrainian soldiers to Nazis and continues to call them Nazis in any speech or any propaganda that he's putting out there. Another thing that happened this week was on March 5th, a group of Chechnyan mercenaries posted a YouTube video showing hundreds of them banding together in a camp, bragging that they were going to go fuck up Ukrainians. Well, whoever posted the YouTube video kept their geolocation on, and Ukrainians bombed them.
God.
So, they did not, in fact, go fuck up Ukrainians.
That's awesome.
Also this week, Ukraine stated that they would be releasing Russian soldiers if their moms came to pick them up at Kyiv.
That's so awesome.
And they, in fact, did. They returned over 100 young baby-faced Russian soldiers who had surrendered, saying that they did not know why they were coming to fight. And they returned 100 of them to their mothers.
Wow.
Which I think is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
However, they stated that they will not be so kind to the soldiers they find firing on citizens, and they will not be taking them as prisoners.
Ooh.
Today, Biden announced that he will no longer be getting oil or resources from Russia, which isn't that big of a deal because America doesn't get a lot of oil from Russia. I mean, we're already seeing prices of gas increase, but it won't change that much. He's basically doing it to set the precedent for Europe, who gets a lot of their shit from Russia, hoping that they will follow suit. Also today, it looked like Russia stopped bombing these civilian refugee camps.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone was hoping that maybe he was getting enough pushback from the protests in Russia. But it turns out that Anonymous had hacked into Russians' radars.
That's awesome.
So they were unable to locate any of these refugee camps. In fact, when they would pull up their radars, you would see the troll face meme guy. So that was like a big deal. It gave everyone enough time to kind of relocate their refugee camps without the fear of being bombed. Anonymous has also hacked into Russia's streaming services, like their version of Netflix, and posted a video showing Russians attacking civilians. There's one that's going around right now that's so hard to watch. It's an elderly couple pulling up outside of a hospital because I think one of them was injured. And right around the corner comes a Russian tank, and they just blow up the car for no reason.
God.
There's also protesters, Ukrainian protesters, that are just walking peacefully in the streets, and Russians just open fire. In some happier news...
Oh, good.
There was a group of Russian soldiers trying to get to the top of a building, like a rooftop. One can only imagine for why.
Yeah.
I can only assume for a good firing position. However, the security in the building stopped the elevator and suspended it for hours, leaving all of them trapped inside, and took a bunch of commemorative pictures of these Russian soldiers freaking the fuck out because they were stuck inside of an elevator.
That's great.
Another awesome story that's coming out is a Ukrainian put a Russian tank up for sale on eBay that he had stole. There's also a TikTok circulating of a young woman in Ukraine, and she's also stolen a Russian tank. I think she's maybe in her early 20s. And she posts this TikTok showing everybody how to start it. Like what buttons to push, what switches to flip, and how to actually drive it. Also this week, 20,000 men and women from countries all around the world traveled to Ukraine and formed the first foreign legion to fight.
Wow. 20,000.
That's
crazy.
That's a lot of people.
That's a ton of people.
Mila Kunis and Ashton Kutcher raised $6.8 million for Ukraine this week.
Wow.
Because, you know, Ukraine is where Mila's from.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Another happy thing that came out of Ukraine this week was a picture of Ukrainian soldiers playing chess with Molotov cocktails. I thought that was pretty fucking awesome. But there have been cities taken over by Russians. Then Ukraine took them over this week. Just, there's so much coming out of there that it's hard to keep up with. There have been smaller cities that have been evacuated because they knew that an imminent attack was coming, and then the Russians move in and say that they took it over by force.
But really they just picked up what everyone else left.
Exactly. So there's so much misinformation and real information coming from Ukraine right now. It's really hard to understand where everything lies, especially like numbers of casualties, things like that.
Well, and it's like you said, like as soon as an incident happens, for example, the nuclear facility, I saw, like you talked about, an article saying it was put out, but that was early on.
Right, and I saw an article today that it's been 12 days and it's still burning.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, it's really, really hard to follow these things. But the biggest question is, like, why is Putin committing all of these war crimes, knowing that when this ends, he's going to jail for a very, very long time.
Right.
And I think it goes back to what we said last episode. Committing war crimes, especially outright killing civilians, is going to be the number one thing that drags us into war with him.
Yeah.
That brings NATO in. That's what we did with Kosovo. It became a humanitarian war because so many people were dying that NATO had to step in.
Yeah.
And I really, truly think that that's
where this is headed.
That's what he wants.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, NATO right now is doing everything they can to keep their stand and not be brought into this and not start World War III. But I truly believe that that is why he is blatantly committing these war crimes.
It's crazy.
This is the crazy, I don't even know what to say. It's unprecedented.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to give an update on that. I know it's all over the news. People are probably inundated with information about it, but
maybe you aren't.
Maybe you aren't. And maybe you're like me and hate trying to go through all the different avenues to find out what's happening. And I can just condense it down and throw it in your face right here.
There you go.
Okay, so that was my update. Why don't you do your story first so people don't have to listen